welcome back to my mermaid series. I still haven't, by the time I'm recording all these videos, I still haven't learned how to edit. Anyways, today we're doing the whale shark. Sorry, I keep looking at myself in the camera. I am incredibly self-conscious. I'm trying to grab my sketchbook because I didn't plan ahead. You can see my breakfast. It's coffee and apples. Breakfast. It's like 2 o'clock. Anyways, today we're doing the whale shark. So here's my concepts for her. I'll go down slow. Pretty nice. Let me grab, there's a few other concepts. My brother helped me decide on a little pixie cut thing for her, I think, and it's gonna look like this. I think that'll look really nice, and she's gonna wear like a shawl and stuff, but hopefully this time I'll be able to do the line art on camera. It kind of just depends on my confidence level and if I can find a better way to set up the camera so it's more comfortable for my hand. I don't know why I put up my left hand. I'm right-handed. Anyways, let's get started with the sketch. Alright, you'll see a warning pop up on the screen here, and basically all it says is that I forgot to turn off the autofocus, so the video until about 13 minutes is going to be a little funky. It's not too terrible to watch, but if it is something that bothers you, go ahead and skip ahead. I promise I will not be upset. But if you decide to stay, let's start talking about the sketching process. So I start by lightly laying out where the head is placed and the AC turned on right as I went to talk, so I hope that's not too loud in the background. Anyways, I started sketching out where the head is placed and then moving on to the body. I'm actually trying to avoid this in more recent sketches because I've learned that it kind of limits movement and makes it a little hard to plan out, especially traditionally. But in this case I did it, and I was trying to make sure the composition fit well, and ultimately I think I did a lot better compositionally in this piece than I did the last piece. I think it first pass laid out pretty well. I do wish that it was shifted a little more to the left, but that's okay. I'm filling in some minor details, for example, her gills on the side, and I'm gonna put a few on her neck, and they're just like a lot more simplified because sharks have more simplified gills than fish, so I wanted to show them as more, I guess, what looked like the scars on the betta fish instead of doing the frills on the inside. Especially because sharks are very smooth, so I didn't want to add too much texture because I wanted to communicate that smoothness. Here I'm setting up her arm positions, and inside of her hands is going to be a little flower, and I purposely did it very close to the body because it's supposed to seem protective. In my merfolk society, whale sharks take on protective and caring roles, for example, teachers to young merfolk, being things like bus drivers, transporters, nurses. Any role that denotes care, you will most likely see a whale shark in. Of course, you can see them outside of those roles because everybody's allowed to do what they want, but that's just commonly what they'll do, especially things that are transporting roles, for example, buses. And the reason I say that is because I saw this picture of a whale shark with a bunch of fish in its mouth, and the researchers who found that shark said that it was transporting those fish, like letting them catch a ride. And I thought that was really interesting. Sorry. I was just trying to clean up some details and I got carried away. I had to look up what a whale shark's tail looked like because I was doing it wrong. But we're gonna quickly clean off this and then get back into it. And we're back to the voiceover. I need to get a little bit better about watching the timeline tick on so I don't accidentally overlap the other spoken footage. A little bit hard when you're going without a script, but anyways, I'm going into the facial expression right now. Facial expression is based on the way that a whale shark's mouth naturally lays, which is downwards, almost like a frown. So I wanted to give her like a melancholy expression, not necessarily sad, but something that is coming close to it. She's not sad, that's just how she looks. I also included the little fin ears, just like I do with all my fish merfolk, but because she doesn't have like fish fins, she has the dorsal fins. I thought it'd be cute to give her little dorsal fins. And the hair, like I said before, is in a pixie cut style. And that's also to kind of not make the mistake I did last time of making the facial area too cluttered. It's to leave enough space to make sure that everything's clearly communicated and that I can have room for the shawl that comes in later. And I think it ended up looking really nice. I love these moments where I just sit there and do nothing because I'm too lazy to go through and edit all those out. It's kind of hard because I don't like jump cuts in my videos. They're jarring and make me uncomfortable, so I try to avoid jump cuts at all possible places. And then here you can see I'm adding a flower into her hair. The reason for that is ethnically and racially, she is supposed to be a mix of Hawaiian and Mexican, because in those parts of the ocean is commonly where you will find whale sharks. And you will see flowers commonly within both cultures. So I wanted to mimic that in the flower in her hair, the flower that she will be holding, as well as the shawl that's going over her shoulders. It's not the pattern so much as just the fact that it is a shawl, because I, as a Mexican, have noticed shawls are commonly used in dress. And then I have pearls to mimic kind of the rounder beaded bracelets that you'll see among Mexican culture. She is supposed to be a mix, but it is leaning a little more Mexican just because I am more comfortable in that culture, obviously. But yeah, now I'm just adding in all of her other fins and cleaning up details, adding the bubble with the flower in it. I wanted her to be protective of the flower and make it look like maybe she's a collector of flowers. I thought that was kind of cute. And then just filling in the background with some other fish. Like I said before, she's supposed to be like a transporter, like a bus. So she has fish around her because she's transporting them. I don't know why I'm saying transporting. I could say like driving, but that's not really appropriate either. It's like how the fish in Finding Nemo rode on the back of the sea turtle. Kind of like that is what I'm thinking. And I'm just adding some kelp or seaweed. Again, to add some visual interest to the background and make it different than coral. Because I want each background to be different. Okay, I'm just gonna go through and darken up some important lines with my pencil and then line it. Alright, and like you saw, I went through and I used my kneaded eraser just like last time to fade out the lines, and then I darkened up some important details in the mechanical pencil because I had really faded out the lines. So I went back just to make sure that I could see what I was doing. And this time I was able to line on camera, and I am able to for the rest of the videos. You can definitely see more line confidence than in my last piece. I was able to go in and everything looked really clean and nice. I was super proud of myself for being able to get the line art done on camera. It's unfortunate that the autofocus is ruining it, but it does look really nice. And here's a good tip for line art. Rotating your paper can really help you get a better angle on things, as well as making sure when you draw a line, draw it away from yourself rather than towards yourself. It just helps with control and to make the line a lot smoother and more confident. But as you can see here, I tend to rotate the paper to the right. I don't quite know why, probably because I'm right-handed, but it really does help me to get a better grip on the paper and the lines so that the lines end up looking better. And I do tape it down to sketch, mainly just so you can see the sketch in the video, but with lining, it's just not really possible to keep it in one place and have a good result. So it's moved around a lot. And I got out, you can see in the corner, I got out the betta fish for reference. That way I can look back and make sure. I wanted the series to look cohesive, so I was referencing back to my betta fish stylistically, which is a great thing to do. If you're creating a series and there's big gaps between the series, having one of those pieces from the original series open for reference really helps to make everything consistent. I did that for my Fruit Blossom series. I had a big gap between making like the very first one, which was the cherry, and the very last one because I was working on it for a really long time. So I always had the very first one open as a reference so I can go back and tweak the later ones to match. That way they didn't look discombobulated. Nathan loves that word, discombobulate. Nathan's my brother, by the way. Can't just be saying names without giving context. Another thing you'll see me do in this video is I do go back and I reline some things. It's not in the same way as the first video where it was a lack of confidence. I'm doing this on purpose to create line variation. Line variation is a really good way to create intrigue and interest in your piece, as well as communicating things like depth and distance. In this case, it's just to add visual interest because, at least for my style, having the one width of line around the entire piece doesn't really look too great, so I always add line variation in my digital and traditional pieces. It's a little bit easier with digital just because you can tune your brush to do it, but with traditional, if you're using liner pens, you have to go back and do it by hand. But and I'm not good with brush pens because I just don't have the hand stability to be able to work with brush pens. You also saw that I went through and I added some lines underneath her shawl, and the reason for that is I want the shawl to be transparent. So I did that so it's like you're able to see the skin through the shawl, but only slightly. So I did the broken up lines to communicate that. And here I am just going back and darkening up certain lines. I really like the idea of merfolk having like bracelets or jewelry around their tail and fins and stuff. I don't know how they would get it on or get it off. I guess maybe clasps. But I just think it's cute. Obviously, the betta fish wouldn't be able to have anything around her tail unless it was really chunky because of the moon-shaped tail, but it's super easy when it's just one big fin like that. And you can see how me darkening up the lines really improves the piece and makes it way more interesting to look at. It's night and day, honestly, with how the piece looks before and after I go through and add these little details. It also, something I do, I don't know if this isn't a tip because I don't know if this is a good technique, but I'll kind of really quickly lay down where I want the line to go, and then I'll go back over it to thicken up the lines as well as define the shape more. That way I'm not too stressed about the first pass making it look perfect because I know I'll be able to go back and fix it. That thick line down there was a mistake that I had to make that thick because I had messed up. Just to be quite honest, that wasn't on purpose, but it ended up looking fine. You can't really tell, and because of the way her weight sits, because all that weight on the bottom, it actually ends up looking really nice. I do have a tangent where that stripe in her head meets her tail, and every time I look at it, it makes me so mad. All right, I've taped it down. It's the next day. Time for painting. What we're gonna do first is go to the concept sheet, grab our paintbrushes. Just realizing I forgot a paper towel. Oops. Anyways, we're just gonna quickly do some concepts. So this is a technique I do to test color palettes before I put anything down on the paper, because you always want to make sure you're confident in your colors before you ruin a piece. So I just go through over the sketches and I'll color directly onto them with the colors that I think I want to use, and I don't focus too much on mixing. I just kind of focus on getting the idea, because I'm pretty confident in my color choices that I can get the exact colors that I want when it is time. I just want to get an idea of saturation, hue, and the placement of those down before I go to paper. So you can see I'm putting down a darker color and I'm experimenting with changing its saturation and its hue, adding a little bit of blue. And I was really careful about the planning of this piece because whale sharks have that very specific light blue color to their skin, and I really wanted to achieve that because it's a really pretty color, and I think I did a pretty okay job. I think it could have been a little lighter and a little more yellow, but I'm very pleased with the color I did end up with. It's a very pretty color blue, probably my favorite color blue. I'm a big fan of cerulean. You can see here I'm mixing paint. I'm being very careful and using a lot of paint. Sorry, Discord again. We're talking about making a blanket fort in chat. Maybe I'll film this that weekend that my friends are coming up for a video. I should probably turn that down so that doesn't keep happening. I'm not redoing this. This is already my second time. Anyways, I'm going in and filling it in. I left those little stripe spots white on purpose. I thought it would just look really cute, and it did end up looking cute. Forgot to do it on the other side, but I just bluff and say it's a shadow. And I thought yellow as the accent color would look really cool because it's, you know, adjacent enough to where it's not super contrasting. It's not a harsh contrast like an orange, but it is a nice contrast that it pops, especially because her design is mostly blue. I needed something to differentiate. And you can see, because I use really thin layers, that the watercolor will start drying as I'm working on other parts of the piece. So another technique I do to make sure that my watercolor doesn't bleed is when I do go to work on another part of the piece while I wait for another part to dry, I never work on pieces that touch. So I didn't immediately go into her skin because I didn't want her hair bleeding. So I went in and did the eyes instead because that doesn't touch the hair. And here I'm going in and I'm doing the pearls. Pearls are like a yellowish color, so I made them a little yellowy. I still wanted them to be white, but like an off-white, like an eggshell white, if that makes sense. Oh yeah, and I realized I totally forgot to cut the tail out of, or one of the parts of the tail out of the tape, so I was so proud of myself for that cut. Like, it was so smooth and so good. Just like, look at that. One fell swoop. Perfect cut. Who am I? And here I am trying to mix up the iconic blue. Adding water is a great way to dilute your colors so they look a little more pastel. And here's what I talked about earlier. I want the skin to be showing through the shawl. So I go through and color in those dotted lines I made. And I leave that white spot on purpose because that's where the belly starts. I also left the palms white since the underside of the whale shark is white. I figured making the palms white would be a really nice way to communicate that. I had to switch to a bigger brush because this is a big area. A lot of the same color. And because I moved that first part of the paint over, when it layers, you can see that one part is darker and it is patchy, but honestly, I ended up really liking it and incorporating it into the shading. I thought it ended up looking really good. The lighting's kind of off here. It does get fixed here soon because I notice and then I adjust it. There we go. Like I said, looks a lot better without, you know, the eyes of God shining down on it. I give her a nice dark lip for a contrast. I don't know if it's supposed to be makeup or she just looks like that. You decide. Here I'm doing some of the blushing. I really like the color I used for the blushing. It's very pretty blue. I love blue. I'm a simple man. I love blue. He's just going in and adding the blushing on the elbows. I probably should have done a little more blushing, but honestly, it's not a big deal. Oh, I did do it on the tips of the fins. I couldn't remember. It looks so nice, too. Blushing just adds, it's just adding a gradient. And adding gradients can add some visual interest if you have a more simplistic style. So, I abuse blushing. Am I doing shading here? What am I doing? I can't see, so I don't know. I think it's still blushing. Wow, I did a lot of blushing. I think I did that because she is so monotone, like literally just one color. So I added a lot of blushing to try and make it look a little more interesting. Oh, trying to even out the color here because I noticed the tail was a lot lighter. And as well as adding the blushing to the tips of the tips of the tail. It would have been cool if I lined her eyes in orange instead of black. That would have looked really cool. Fortunately, I only have black liners. And I'm gonna do the shawl and make it really cute and transparent with a little gradient. Really liked how the shawl turned out. I thought it was really nice and surprised how nice it came out. Just patting myself on the back this entire video because I think it came out so good. So, something happened. It stopped recording. I don't know why it stopped recording, but it did. So I lost the footage of the shading. It's not too wholly different, but I'm still pretty upset. So I'll just show you guys what it looks like right now, and I'll come back. I have to go upload some footage so I have more room on my phone. But I'm gonna go buy a white gel pen and then finish this up. So see you soon. Alright, it's been a few hours. Went to the store, Michael specifically, and grabbed some white gel pens. And the piece is fully dry. All I have to do is add the highlights and the background, which I'm going to do now. I moved all my footage over so that that wouldn't happen again. I am going to try and get a new phone that has a better internal storage eventually, but for now I'm just going to look at memory cards. And yes, I film on my phone because I lost my camera. So let's get back into it. Alright, back to the voiceover. Sorry, I was zoning out watching the video. I'm just painting the background, so I decided to go with like a green instead of a blue. Now, the ocean in that area is not green, obviously, but I didn't want to do blue because I was afraid that she would fade into the background too much, so I did more of a green color. It's still blue, it's just a blue-green. It also helps to complement the kelp that are brought in later, because I do go over and color them with a little bit of green. And it looks really nice. It looks like a nice kelpy part of the ocean, like the sun's reflecting off the kelp and making the ocean green. That's what's happening. Just making this shit up as I go. Now obviously the important part of the whale shark, the spots have not been done yet, but be patient, we'll get there, I promise. Also, I don't know what happened. I guess I lost a part of the kelp footage, but I'm going in now and I'm drawing in the kelp using some gel pens. I made it nice and lush. I overlapped the shapes. It's really awesome. I said awesome because I was reading somebody else's Discord message that said that she made awesome beef stew. And my brain got distracted because I love beef soup. Mostly for the potatoes and the vegetables. I don't, like, the beef is good, but I really like the broth and the veggies. I'm doing filler content because there's just not much to talk about with this piece. It's a pretty simple piece, and I think that's why I like it a lot. Just going in, the colors I picked for the kelp. So nice, that blue-green combined with the more yellow-green. And then here I'm going in and adding the spots. I did go a little spot crazy. I should have planned out a little bit better how the spots were going to lay because some of them just look terrible. But I think it communicates whale shark. And that's the important part, is that people understand that this is a whale shark. And I put them all over. When it comes to the face, though, instead of putting them all over, I made them like freckles, which you'll see here soon. So it's supposed to look like she has little cute white freckles. Or maybe you won't. Maybe I didn't do that on camera. Oops. I'm adding in those white highlight lines. Make it look like, light's coming from somewhere. I don't know. Oh, I did. Okay, I added the freckles right here. And then you can see I add that white line up there to separate the tail and the head. That way you don't see the tangent as easily. Very smart way to separate shapes and also create more depth is to just add a little white line. If you struggle with having flatter pieces and poses, it's a good way to separate pieces. I also just added bubbles. You know, underwater, there's bubbles. Alright, and all the touch-ups will be made off camera, and then I will show her off once that's done. Outro number 2. This one was for the lovely, lovely whale shark. Now, I do say all of them are one of my favorites, which doesn't work, but this one is my absolute favorite, so I'll get close and show it off. And again, with all of these, I do go through and digitally touch them up, so you'll notice in the digital version the spots are a little bit cleaner, and I think that's all I really do for her. Just clean up the spots mostly. She's probably my favorite because my favorite color is blue, and sharks are one of my favorite animals, so I am very biased. Anyways, I really enjoyed the process of this one, I think the most out of all of them, and I hope you enjoyed watching it, and if you did, make sure you leave a like, a comment, make sure you subscribe. Feel free to ask questions down below, and in my description I'll leave all the supplies that I use, as well as any other informations like the references I use for the poses and stuff. And you'll also find my social media down there. Like I said in the last video, these are available as physical prints and stickers down on my Etsy, which will be in the description. And I also have an Instagram where I post every week. I have a TikTok where I post every day. I post here once a week. And I post on Twitter when I remember it exists. Anyways, I hope you're having a wonderful day/night, whatever it is, wherever you are. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.